Well, Marcos Soto is here with me on the line. Thank you for stepping up to the line. A podcast dedicated to elevating the view of the skilled trades, the men and women who do the work. I really appreciate you taking the time here. Where are we at, Marcos?
We're on project 1134, Peachtree West Side, where we are upsizing sewer main.
Okay. And we're in the state of Georgia,
Yeah.
actually. If you're listening right now, we're here in the state of Georgia. It's actually a pretty nice day. I mean, the sun just came out while we're sitting here, but it's a nice day. And Marcos, you're here with Ruby Collins.
Yep. Ruby Collins.
Tell us a little bit about Ruby Collins and what you guys do.
Well, Ruby Collins now is actually a big outfit, I would say.
Can you pull your mic just a little closer there? There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ruby Collins does have different divisions. I myself work on the pipeline division.
Okay.
So, they have heavy civil. They have like a lining. They have boring or like tunneling.
Yeah.
So, and then they have like the plant division as well, like treatment plants.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So for people who are listening that maybe don't know a whole lot about construction, all of that stuff is kind of tied together with infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're actually just outside of maybe we're in the middle of a residential neighborhood. I don't know what I would say.
Yeah. Right across the street.
Right across the street. And so the pipeline work, a lot of what you guys do, and then even treatment plants, that's all about clean water, dirty water, making water clean, all of it. Yeah.
Allowing a path for everything to flow.
Okay. So Marcos, how long have you been doing this?
In the pipeline, 12 years.
12 years. Yeah. And was that your first entry into the trades, into construction?
It was not. Actually, when I first started in construction, straight out of high school, went in to work on cooling towers.
Really?
Yeah.
Like power plants?
It was mainly at plants, it's just the cooling towers that cool the chillers down.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but it was all out of town work, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was at your headquarters here, and they're like, we're going to go out to a job site. And I'm like, I don't know if we have time for that. And this is not far away. Is this typical of your jobs, that they're this close to your office?
We're just lucky.
We're just lucky. So when you made your shift from that type of work, it was mainly to get closer to home?
Yeah, to stay home, stay in town.
Okay. So you're home every night for the most part?
Definitely, yeah.
That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. I know in my beginning stages of my career, that was not always the case, but it really was something that became very important to me.
Yeah, definitely. Once you have kids, it's very valuable.
So you do have kids?
Yep.
How many kids?
5 kids.
5?
Yep.
Come on. Do you mind me asking their ages?
No. The oldest, she's 17.
Uh-huh.
Her brother is 15.
Okay.
Aaliyah is 10. Junior is 7, and Matthew's 3.
Wow, you have the whole gambit there. You're like,
yeah.
You have 17 and 3. I have 3 children, and they're all, my youngest is 15. Then I have a 17-year-old, and then I have either a 19 or a 20-year-old. I can't remember where she's at. Yeah, that's a really good point about the work. Is I think that's something I wish someone would have told me when I was starting in construction, is to think about where I wanted to end up, not where I was starting.
Exactly.
I wish that someone would have shared that with me, because I was just looking for money when I started. And I think that's important. I mean, I say it's important. It's like, it's not something that's bad to look for, but it's not everything. Because I actually took a pay cut to be able to be home every night, and it was well worth it, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. I know my wife definitely appreciated that. So
they do most of the time.
They do most of the time. So that was your origin. You're here, you're doing pipe work. One thing that I noticed about Ruby Collins, your different divisions. So you guys are here putting in a construction entrance for another division, actually, in a job that they're doing, correct?
Yes, to give them access to this easement, which back behind us right here, there's a creek crossing.
Okay.
So we had to build a construction entrance for them so they can get access to bring their machinery and their equipment and everything back here.
Okay. So, we turned on the cameras and everybody ran away. Like, there was all these guys working around. We turned on the cameras and now they're gone. With what you're doing here, what is a typical project that you and your team work on?
We pretty much start from the get go. I mean, as soon as someone brings up a project, everybody, they'll have the clearing come in, which
Yeah.
is it's subbed out. We don't do the clearing ourselves. And then silt fence companies will come in and put silt fence, and once the job is ready for us to come in and start excavating, we'll come in and start excavating.
Okay. And so, about how many guys are on your crew?
Typically, it's 8 guys, and with myself is 9.
And what's involved in the process of the pipe laying crew? Like, can you walk me through some of the steps of what your project is? Like, I'm assuming that you put pipe in the ground,
Yeah.
but yeah, walk me through the steps.
So basically, depending on where the project is going to start, we have elevations that we have to follow. So we have a starting point, and from there, usually the elevations change because of new buildings. There's more sewer being dumped into these lines, so the lines are being upsized. So the elevations do change, but we'll have a start point. We'll start excavating. There might be some changes as far as positioning for more structures or even additional lines.
Okay.
To catch maybe new subdivisions or something. Just depends on what's going on in the area.
So there's a lot of thinking ahead in what you guys do.
A lot of, yes, definitely thinking ahead and planning ahead. There's a lot of minds involved in what we're doing. Yeah.
So when that happens, you guys are going through that process. The property or the project looks totally different than the way it's going to end.
Yeah. Well, there's always there's a picture when you start.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it's going to look like at the end. And the people in charge are pretty good about it.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. That's usually it's pretty close.
Why? And I'm putting you on the spot here. I find it really interesting. He didn't even know that we were doing a podcast today. His boss has just said, "Here's the job site. Go there, grab Marco, sit down." Yeah. So
Yeah.
to his credit, we didn't have to do a whole lot of convincing. Maybe they told you there wasn't an option. I don't know.
Yeah. I can tell they like me.
I don't know if he's telling the truth. Oh my goodness. What is it about the pipeline work that you like the most?
What I like the most is that you can definitely tell when you have a very efficient crew.
Okay.
Because
I love efficiency. So tell me more about that.
It's just, they will say there's 9 guys with myself.
Yeah.
And, the guys are working, everyone has their role. There's always something to do.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're watching the excavator, dig out a trench, pull your trench box, prep the ditch with, gravel, you got the guys on the bank, they got the pipe ready, or we'll say the wheel loader. Maybe the staging area is a little bit further away from where we're actually installing it. They're moving it in, the guys on the ground are getting it ready, excavators picking it up, putting it in. It's just a rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All day.
I love that word rhythm. I mean, it's kind of like, when an engine is running and it has the perfect hum, the RPMs are right. Like when things are working in sync together, that's a pretty cool feeling. Is that pretty typical with your crew? Are you typically working with the same guys, or you get new guys cycled in and out where you have to kind of make some adjustments and things like that?
For the most part, most of the guys on my crew, we've been together for more than 5 years. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow. Is that typical within your organization, or is that just your crew in particular? Because more than 5 years, one crew being together, that feels like you guys almost become like a family.
Yeah.
Good, bad, and the ugly.
It's definitely, they're all you can think about of being a family, that's them. The good and the bad. Yeah, no, but it's typical. It's Ruby Collins is a great company to work for.
Yeah.
It's you don't see a lot of employees just come and go very quickly.
Yeah.
In this industry, there's a lot of other companies that do the same work. So obviously you have guys that have that in mind. Maybe they just want to stop by and pick up a little knowledge and try to make it further up, or try to get more money somewhere else. But that's just, it's part of the trade.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Wow, 5 years, the same crew together. That's pretty impressive. And I would think that that's why you can get the rhythm, because you know one another. Yeah. So you don't typically have new guys coming into your crew then?
We do.
Okay.
We'll have some new guys. It just depends if it's a bigger project.
Yeah.
You know, Ruby Collins knows that the crew needs to be a little bit bigger. So, so we can keep the work flowing. So they'll add new employees, and some know, some have experience, some don't. All are welcome.
Yeah.
We show them on site.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a question, but before I do, it's gonna kind of break up what we're talking about. So, when we come back to this, I want to talk to you about how you train.
Okay.
That's what I want to talk about. But what is a tool or a piece of gear that Marcos cannot live without that you need every day?
A measuring tape.
Okay.
Out here on the job site, you need a measuring tape.
Tell me why that's so important to you.
Because everything runs off of measurements out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to be able to measure. If you're asked to measure something and you don't have a measuring tape, how do you measure it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I started in the ditch as a pipe layer, and my foreman back then, he would chew me out for if I didn't have my measuring tape on me, if I forgot it in the porta john, if I forgot it in my car. So I get home, I don't take my measuring tape on until I walk inside the house.
Isn't it funny? Like you talk about that, and I just had some like regurgitated trauma when I started out in the trade. That being yelled at. Like there's so many things like that. For me, a measuring tape as well is one of those traumatic things. My wife will even joke every time that we go out to a hardware store or something. I have this disease where I like have to buy a measuring tape. Like you can never have too many, because anytime that I'm doing something, I'm like, where's that at? And I can remember being yelled at for the very same thing. So, but my job was nowhere near as important as yours. It was all about the conduit that I was cutting or whatever it was for electrical work. So, what brand measuring tape? Do you have a specific brand that you like?
Personally
we're going
like
to try to get a sponsorship here.
The Stanley.
No way.
That's the one that I like. It's light, durable.
So Stanley Classic, like
Just
not
the
even the
regular
Fat
one.
Max, just
the regular one.
Oh, come on. Come
Right
on. Yeah.
This one.
Yep. I keep that same tape measure in my briefcase.
Yeah. It's the one that I like. They have the DeWalt's. They have the Milwaukee ones. They're just too bulky, too heavy for me.
Yeah.
I like those.
That tape measure is actually the one that I grew up with. I can still remember with my father. He was a carpenter, and he was doing a job on a house, and him taking me. He was putting windows in or something, and he was teaching me how to use a metal brake, and he took that opportunity to teach me how to use a tape measure. I can still, if I close my eyes, I actually can picture him pointing out the different marks and what they meant, and me learning that. It was one of the interesting origins of Blackline. We have an institute where we train people to be electricians.
Okay.
And one of the things that struck me about the importance of training was the company that I had founded before Blackline. There was a young woman working for us, and I was a project manager, and I was walking through, the job site, and I walked past the room and I saw her in there, and she was like struggling with the tape measure. And it really hit me, actually, because I walked in and I was like, hey, what's the matter? And she's looking at it and she goes, I don't know how to use it. And the reason that it struck me so hard was my father had taken the time to teach me how to do that. And I remembered that memory was in my mind. And in conversation with her, I'm not going to try to get too real here, but she didn't have a father.
Okay.
And she didn't have anybody in her life. And this was she got a job needing to make money. And this was like her first real job. And it was like she'd been there. And I was just struck by, as a company, there I was in leadership. And I'm like, well, that's our responsibility. Because I was the one that was unique in that position, that I had a father that took the time to teach me. There was more people on the job site that had her experience than mine. And so I was like, wait a minute here. We need to be taking the time to train and to teach people what I was so fortunate to have been taught. And so that was kind of some of the origins of our institute and wanting to train people. But it was even far before that, because it was like, as a company, we were realizing that's what we need to do. We need to teach people. We need to train people. And training isn't just about the work. It's also about how you work together, how you communicate, how you function, all of that. So So with that, when you have new people coming on your crew and you're training as what would you call your crew, like pipe fitters, pipe layers? What would the term be?
I don't like to call them laborers,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what we all start off as
Yeah.
laborers, because if they don't have the experience, so they just come in helping to do whatever they can as far as labor work goes.
I understand you're not liking to call them laborers because in our industry overall, that it kind of has become a term that I don't want to say it means less than, but maybe looked down upon.
Yeah.
And the reality is, laborers are essential and important. Definitely. And I heard I was doing a podcast with a company called Kiewit, and they call their labor craft, and I was like, oh, I like that, okay. And because they're like, well, it's a craft in what we do, and it really is, in what you're doing. And when you have a crew that cares about their work, it doesn't matter how simple or mundane it is, it's really important. Using that tape measure in an appropriate way, it really matters.
Definitely.
So, I mean, in your business, it can be the difference between success or failure, I would think.
Yeah, because you're using it every day, all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell the guys on my crew, I tell them the measuring tape, you have to have it on you at all times. The operator has to have a measuring tape. The guy on the ground has to have a measuring tape. Everyone needs to have a measuring tape.
So if I would have hollered at one of these guys down here in the trench, they would have had a measuring tape on them?
Maybe, maybe not.
Oh, we need to get the camera on. We're gonna have to find one of them, ask them if they have a measuring tape, see if they're listening to their boss.
Usually the excuse you get is I forgot it in my car, or this. So I was like, well, it needs to be on your belt or on your pants or somewhere. You need to have it within reach because you need to be able to ask anyone on the crew, pull this measurement real quick.
Yeah.
And that way, here you go. Everyone has a measuring tape.
Yeah. How do you so your foreman, when you started, kind of chewed you out about it. How do you handle that when guys don't have a measuring tape? Because I would think that there are ways, and I was chewed out when I was an apprentice, and I deserved it, to be totally honest. But how do you handle that? How does Marcos handle that?
So
it's okay if you chew them out. We're just going to tell the whole world.
No, they don't get chewed out, but they get the point.
Yeah.
So the point that I try to get across is that
spoken like a true dad.
if they don't have a measuring tape, then how are you going to continue work for today?
Yeah.
You can't borrow the other guy's measuring tape because that's his measuring tape.
Yeah.
He's ready to work. But what about you?
Ooh.
So
that sounds like a phrase you've said out loud before.
Yeah, use it. I mean, they have to fall into sync.
Yeah.
So they're pretty good about it now. My guys are. They have their measuring tape.
Well, I mean, as long as you guys have worked together, you kind of make me. I think of like the SEAL teams. It's like you guys are SEAL Team 6. Like you're working together. You have your time down. I would actually think it's probably difficult for a new guy coming in to work with your team because you guys are all so close knit, knowing one another.
You can, I guess, you can imagine or maybe think that it's difficult. I like to say it's actually easy.
Come on, tell me more.
You're coming in with not a lot of experience into a crew that has a bunch of guys that have a good amount of experience.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn, you're going to learn. It's going to be fast.
So let's talk about that, because one of the things that I've seen over the decades, and it sounds like your crew isn't this way, but I'm going to ask you an honest question. One of the things that I've seen is with experienced people, a lack of almost a frustration of a newbie coming in. At least for me, when I was an apprentice, this is how it was. And not a wanting to teach me or mentor me or help me learn in that way. I mean, if you're saying that, well, for new guys, it's really easier because we have all this knowledge, we have all this experience. What is the attitude with which that your team treats a new guy when he comes in? Because, I mean, it sounds like it's more inviting and more teaching, but what does that look like for your team?
Well, as soon as you mention that we're going to get a new guy on the crew, right? The guys right off the bat start asking, what does he know how to do? Does he know how to do this? Does he know how to do that? Well, I'm like, he's new.
He's new.
You're going to have to show him.
Yeah.
And, and they know that showing someone is, you have to be patient with them because everyone is different. So you have to find out what the new guys are good at. What can you have them learn faster? And then with time, they're going to catch on to the other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's mainly more like the guys that are already been here. The rest of
Yeah.
the crew, they're more worried about it than I am. It's like they're gonna fall into place.
Yeah.
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 Just keep working the same way you're working. You know, whatever you need, show them. You know, and if he has any questions, you know, show him again.
So on crews that aren't like yours, and some of the experiences that I've had, where guys are almost frustrated with a new guy coming on, why do you think we struggle with that in the industry? Why do you think that old hats, old timers, why is that a struggle when a new guy comes on? Because I would say what you're talking to me about, what you're saying right now, is not the norm. And maybe I'm wrong. If you're out there and you're like, well, that's my crew, well, then great. That was not my experience coming up in the trade. And I'm just curious, what is Marcos's insights into why experienced guys struggle with that sometimes?
It just depends. Maybe when they got started, it wasn't as easy for them. Or maybe the guys they got started with made it very difficult for them.
Yeah.
You know, they made them work for that knowledge. Maybe they didn't want to show them.
Yeah.
You know, everyone thinks differently. There's some guys out there that sometimes they don't want to show the guys that don't know because they don't have the patience, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, or they just don't. Maybe they don't see potential in the person right off the bat. You know, like, nah, he's not gonna catch on. So
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna show him. You know, there's guys like they're out there.
Well, those guys are out there, and I was talking with you earlier about mistakes, and I'm not there yet as far as asking you that question. But what you just talk about there, I can remember being the experienced guy, and I have eaten so much humble pie over the years where I would look at a guy and be like, oh, he just doesn't have the potential. He doesn't have what, like I would judge him in my mind and be like, yeah, they're never going to be. And I've been proven wrong so many times that I almost, if I look at someone and I'm like thinking that, oh yeah, they don't have what it takes, I'm almost to the point now where I'm like, oh wow, they're going to be really wildly successful. They really, you know, just because, and the importance of not, and this is going to sound so cliche, but not judging a book by its cover or day one or day two or day three, because time is how you establish experience.
Yep.
And I heard an old timer that I really respect once say, attitude and effort.
Yep.
If you have the right attitude and you put in the effort, I'll show you whatever you want to know. I'll teach you whatever you want to know. And I mean, if you're a new guy coming into the job and you have the right attitude and you have effort, even the guys that don't want to naturally, you know, have grace for you in that way are going to want to invest in you because they're going to see that attitude and effort and want to do that. At least that's what I've seen. So,
yeah.
So, Ruby Collins, you're here. You're part of the pipe crew. You work together with your teams. What can you tell me about the overall culture and company of Ruby Collins? Like, I'm someone on the outside looking in, and there are all these other companies out there that do what you guys do. What makes Ruby Collins different from your perspective? Not what's on the wall in your corporate office.
I think what makes Ruby Collins stand out is that even the guys out here in the field, they know the leadership. They know the people up top because, you know, they frequently come out here. They'll come out to the job sites. You know, if you don't know them, you'll know them then because they come out, they shake your hand, you know, and they have different events throughout the year. It's not, you know, we don't work for a company. It's like, well, we're just here and we don't even know who's actually running the company.
Yeah.
Like we know the faces. So when, you know, we run into them at the office or at the shop or on site, you know, we know who they are.
Yeah.
So I think that makes Ruby Collins stand out because we're just the pipeline division. We work on the pipe. We're one crew in the pipeline division, and the company is much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that is pretty clear. I mean, that's an honest answer and it's truthful because I can see that in your company. Like when I was meeting with them and I was like, well, who do you want me to do a podcast with? They were looking at which division it was going to impact the most to highlight. They were very aware of, well, these guys are always out of sight, out of mind. In our socials, we want to promote what they're doing. We want to highlight what they're doing because it has tremendous value. And I think that's something that you and I were talking earlier, like you guys are are working here and partnering with your other division that's going to be boring a hole through the hillside over there. Yeah. And sometimes certain things don't look as sexy as other things do. And so it doesn't get the promotion because it doesn't get the clicks or the views, but they're no less important. Why do you think that is, that we don't focus in that way? Or let me rephrase the question. Let me say it like this. How do we not ignore the aspects of the divisions and the trades and the jobs and the tasks that look less important, but yet actually have no less importance? Does that make sense? I mean, I might have made that question too hard.
How do we not ignore them?
Yeah. How do we not do that?
Maybe.
I mean, obviously have them on the line. And be on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean that too. Make it known to more people. Yeah. What was actually going on, like on pipeline crews. Yeah. Because I guess it's hard to, because pipeline's like, oh, the crew came by here, they dug, installed pipe, and they're moving along. Yeah. And that was it. We're not stationary most of the time. We don't come and we stay at one location for months in and months out. So it's like we show up, we do our excavations, install our pipe, and we're moving along. Restoration begins, and then, they'll just say, well, some company came by here and installed some pipe a couple years ago. Yeah. So, I think it's important to know what we do as well, because, it's definitely very important, for everyone, every homeowner, every business owner, because all your sewage water goes through these lines. Yeah. And then we also bring all the fresh water to your houses and to your locations, your business locations. Yeah. Well, I think that, what you talk about there, the importance of people knowing what you do. I was reading some sort of article or statistic about how many lives clean water has saved. And it was related to plumbers. They were labeling it as plumbers. But plumbers' jobs don't work without your job, which I think also ties in the importance of the things that you don't see and how everything is like interconnected and it works together. But it's like without the clean water effect that we get from pipeline crews, from plumbers, from the trades, has saved more lives than any doctor ever. Like all doctors. And I don't remember the stat off the top of my head, so ask ChatGPT, he'll tell you. But the reality is that's true, and it makes sense. I remember as a young man, I was in some countries that were economically different than the United States, and clean water was not common. And we don't realize, like, for me, I get used to my truck has power windows. When I started driving, there wasn't any car that I had power windows. I had to roll them up. If my kids are listening, they don't know what that means. But we get used to some of the things that we experience because of those who've come before us, and we take it for granted. And I think what you guys are doing is one of those things. It's like people flush the toilet and they don't realize that you had guys in the dirt making that possible. Exactly. Yeah. I've heard it before. I can't remember off the top of my head what old timer I heard it from, but he's like, we kind of, it's similar in work, but just, bigger scale. He's like, we're not plumbers, we're glorified plumbers. It's like, I know we're not plumbers because we don't work inside people's homes and stuff like that, but, all the plumbing work they do falls into our lines. Absolutely. Yeah. And without your lines, it has nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that infrastructure is so important. Knowing your craft, understanding your team, understanding the work that you do. So we talked about this earlier, and this is a really good conversation, Marcos. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Oh, thank you for the opportunity. This is valuable. So speaking of value, I talked with you earlier about mistakes. Mm-hmm. What's a mistake in work or in life that you've made that you would be willing to share with our listeners that might be listening, that they might be able to gain value from and learn from, and maybe not be doomed to make the same mistake themselves? Yeah. I can share two with you.
All right, I like it.
The first one being, a lot of people see this as construction work.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, oh, I work in construction. I think when I started in construction, maybe it's a mistake because I think I should have took it more as a career, not just as a job in construction. Because maybe I'm not like a college graduate or something like that. I didn't go to school for get a degree in something, but right out of high school I started in construction, the construction field. There's different things, but not taking it as a career or looking at it as a career, I think was a mistake. I think a lot of the younger guys should see it as a career because it's a career.
Yeah.
There's so much potential in construction itself. Whatever field you decide to go into,
More so now than ever.
Yeah, I mean, because even here in Georgia and Atlanta, they're building everywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere you drive, there's traffic, there's building. They're just building.
It is crazy. I was just reading the other day, like data centers are a big deal. AI is a big deal right now. And Georgia is second only to Texas in the amount of data center projects that it has going on.
And Texas is huge.
Yeah.
So, that would be number one. And number two, I think it took a while to notice the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But once it was noticed, and I had to do or did what I had to do to correct it, I think it's very important for people, women and men in the construction field to learn how to separate work from personal life at home.
Yeah, that's true.
Because construction is not easy.
Yeah.
It's stressful. And then the more you want to advance, the more stress,
that's
the
true.
stress level rises, right? More responsibilities. So with that being said, it becomes easier to take that home with you. But I think it's very important not to.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake I was making before, where I was allowing myself to bring that home with me. Having kids, definitely not a good idea, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So you have to be able to make it home in a good state of mind because you got the little ones waiting for you.
So that's a mistake that you've made. What can I ask you? I'm going to just dig in a little bit here. What have you done to adjust for that, to not take that stress home?
It's
drinking, drugs?
No.
Kidding.
Never been a drinker. No drug use. It's I think what I've done is to definitely separate it. So you make it home.
Yeah.
There's always ties to work, especially when you're in management, right? Because the phone is there.
Yeah.
There can be an issue on the job. They have to be able to reach you. Someone has to be able to reach you. But as far as just talking about work, or talking about the problems at work or the problems with the crew, the guys are complaining about something or so-and-so's not getting along with so-and-so anymore, just leaving that at work.
Yeah.
So when the question is asked, like most guys or even, women in construction, you make it home.
Yeah.
Your husbands or your wives ask you, how was work?
Yeah.
And that's like, they open that door and here you go. You're talking about work again.
Yeah.
I just think, and what I've done is I just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Just like, it was okay day.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what happened here at the house, with the kids.
I think that's so wise because especially those of us who are working in construction, and I can't speak to from a female perspective, but I can from my perspective. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want to come home and I want to know about my wife's day. Mm-hmm. I want to know about my kids' day because that's actually the fuel that gives me to be able to go into the next day.
Definitely.
It's why I do what I do, so that their day can be what it can be. Mm-hmm. And that's my investment in that. And so if I'm not careful, like you, I think what you're saying is very insightful because it's kind of like, you pull the string and it just keeps coming if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you train your mind to be like, all right, this is going to be my answer when I'm asked that question. I don't want to go into this, and it's like, and if you need to talk with your wife or your spouse, or your husband about that, the important thing I think too is to set up appropriate boundaries that you're not doing it as soon as you walk in the door.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, later tonight, can I talk to you about X? You might want to process with them. My spouse is someone that I trust more than anybody else in the world. And so, and she's pulled me back from the ledge more than once.
There you go.
Not always in a very nice way, though. But one more question I have for you, and then I'll let you get back to work and try to make some money. So you work in construction. You have 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend a job in construction to any of your kids? And just answer honestly.
Definitely, yeah. And I so I'm the oldest of 5 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Even them, it's just, yeah, there's a lot of potential for growth in construction. Construction is not just construction, the word.
Yeah.
It's a huge field.
Come on.
It's enormous. So
Yeah.
there's so many routes you can take. But I definitely recommend it to them. I tell them, because, sometimes kids, when you have little ones, they say, I want to be just like you, Dad.
Yeah.
They don't even know what they're talking about yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just kind of say it because, it just kind of comes out of them by itself.
Yeah.
And I don't see it as something less.
Right.
I mean, I'm like, go for it.
Yeah.
There's money to be made. And it's, like I said, it's a career.
It's a career.
And as long as you started off as a career, it's endless. Who knows where you're going to end up at.
I love it.
I
love it. I always end, with saying, thank you for stepping up to the line. And I encourage our listeners to step up to the line and lift a view of the skilled trades. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you take us out? Your camera's right over here.
Mm-hmm.
And step up to the line, lift a view of the skilled trades. Can you do that for me in Spanish?
Step up to the line.
Yeah.
And what else?
Lift the view of the trades.
Let's see.
You can do just step up to the line too, whatever is easier for you.
Para toda la gente en la construcción, no lo vean como nomás un trabajo. Es una carrera, y es una carrera importante que mueve el país. Entonces, tómenlo como una carrera, no nomás un trabajo.
Marcos, thank you for stepping up to the line with me today. And let me know in the comments what names he called me there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.